Good morning. My name is Lucy Yates, and I am here in Los Angeles with one of the greatest Santa favorites.
Santa
You knew there would be
favorites.
dad jokes.
Oh my
with
God.
the great Rodney Gilfry to speak with us about Count Almaviva for the Santa Fe production of The Marriage of Figaro, Le Nozze di Figaro of Mozart and Da Ponte.
And no, I'm not singing the role. I'm here as a local expert.
You are the local
expert witness. I'm an expert witness.
You're the chief perpetrator
Yeah.
because you are guilty of two of the most prominent productions of the 1990s, really, of Les Nozze di Figaro. One was filmed with John Elliott Gardner conducting in Paris, and the other was filmed with Nicholas Harnoncourt conducting in Zurich in 1996. And so audiences will be able to find those on YouTube, so you can do your preparation for this summer and see Rod in action as the Count.
Yeah, it's a big honor to be considered an expert on like my favorite opera in the world. I say if I could go to a desert island with Marriage of Figaro and Falstaff, I would be happy because they're both incredible masterpieces. And yeah, so let's get started. What do you want to know?
And those are the two masterpieces, I think, where, as my friend Francesco Maria Colombo would say, the Italian conductor, the microcosm and the macrocosm are so perfectly superimposed and balanced. So it's interesting that you would choose those two
Yeah,
to be together.
Yeah,
As you can
that's
see.
exactly why I chose them.
Because you see the big picture and the small detail,
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
which is something the Count also does. Because, is it true to say as he gets more paranoid, he has more things to keep track of? As he thinks more things are slipping out of his control?
It's like anyone who lies or commits a crime. They've got a lot of stuff to keep track of. They got to keep track of all the lies and all who knows what and all the machinations and the very complicated inner workings of all of those things. They have to keep all the balls in the air. It's like juggling with more and more balls. Yeah, right. That's why it's best to be honest, Lucy.
It's best to be honest.
Yeah, just be honest.
That is good advice. Yeah. What does honesty have to do with honor, and why does he talk about l'onor mio? What does that mean?
Yeah, I think it's a completely selfish concept for him that his honor is about what people think about him and about having no compromise. And I don't think there's any altruism or any ethical reason that he feels so strongly about his honor. It's just that he has to maintain this control over everyone, and that's what the honor's about, I think. I mean, sure, you want people to think well of you, of course. And if you're in a position of power, you don't want any of that power to slip away. And so you have to keep things in rigid control. And then you preserve your honor. It's like, you mentioned Gesualdo in one of your correspondences.
Because you mentioned it.
Did I mention
in
Gesualdo?
An interview, you did.
Because Gesualdo, he was the Prince of Genova, or Venosa, and he killed his wife and her lover, and he was immune from prosecution. Number one, because he was a prince, but also because it was one of the things we call an honor killing. He preserved his honor by murdering his wife and her lover. So that's kind of what it is. To preserve your honor, you punish people at all costs, I guess.
Your honor is injured when your wife cheats. But when you cheat, nothing happens. No. So we're going to get to that double standard. I think it's important for people to know that the Count is not merely a count, but he's a grandee of Spain. La grandeza de España, as I understand it, which translates to the greatness of Spain, was the group of nobles who were descended from the founding royal princes of Spain, of the different parts of Spain. And so if you were a grandee, that rank trumped, any additional
You had
rank
to
that
say
you
it.
had, somebody was gonna. Whether you were a marquis or a count or whatever rank you held, if you were also a grandee, that catapulted you up into this top rank, and that's where Almaviva is. And those people were allowed, I think at first, to keep their hats on and to keep their seats in the presence of the king.
Wow.
They also had diplomatic passports, and they had complete legal immunity because, as you say, they were the law.
Yeah.
And so if you are the count, and I think that's why so many productions, including your Gardner production, have the count putting on his judicial robes in the middle of the aria, because he's that's showing the audience visually that he's going off to be the law.
But he can adjudicate his own case, which is like shouldn't be able to do. But yeah, well, I didn't know all about the Grandeza de España, but that's pretty cool.
I just looked it up very recently, but to understand this idea of where that power comes from and how much of it you take for granted and at what point you feel it starting to slip.
Yeah.
That makes you try to hold on to everything, that makes you try to control all the details.
Right.
Did you wore that rank so lightly, if we can do another minute of backstory, in The Barber of Seville, which, if the audience doesn't know, is the first in the Beaumarchais Figaro trilogy. There's The Barber of Seville, The Marriage of Figaro, and then The Guilty Mother, which people know much less and is much darker than the other two plays. La Mère Coupable. Yeah. And that really follows you and the Countess into some deep, deep waters and some grief and a lot of other darkness. But in the first play, which absolutely sparkles, you can't wait to escape your rank. You can't wait to make a sport of it.
Yeah.
You, with Figaro's help,
Yeah.
you catch the girl,
Yeah.
you marry her, and then what happens in those 3 years of marriage to make that rank weigh so much more heavily on you, or to make you want to push it so heavily on everyone else?
Well, first of all, Rosina's a trophy wife. You know, it's sort of like the way that in The Marriage of Figaro that he's thinking about Susanna. He talks about in the aria as un ben che van desio, as this good thing. It's like he talks about it like a piece of cake. You know, it's like I want this thing. I have hunger for cake, and I will eat cake because I am entitled to eat cake, right? Whenever I want to, as much as I want. I think it was the same thing with Rosina. I think it was this kind of, the thrill of the hunt, that she was really hot, and he just wanted her. When a count wants what he wants what he wants.
And he can have it. He gets it.
And in that position, the feeling of privilege and entitlement is so baked into his character that it's inseparable.
Baked in like a cake.
Like a cake. Mm-hmm. For people who are very privileged and entitled, it's like that part of them is baked in, and you can't expect them to be changed by a relationship or by, say, if they're extremely narcissistic, as the Count is, and if he were to be elected to the highest office in the land, you would not expect him to change. You'd be foolish to expect him to change.
You'd be foolish to expect him to change.
Right? And that's how he is. That sense of entitlement is so part of him that he takes it for granted. It's a knee-jerk reaction. It's instantaneous, I think. It's not even considered. I want that, and I'm going to have that. And
It's like the hunting.
Yeah, it's like
because you can shoot it and it dies.
Yeah.
Right?
And then it's yours. Yeah.
The other thing, I know most of the audience will know this already, but our production, designed by Laurent Pelly and Chantal Thomas, and directed by Laurie Feldman, has as its set a giant clock face, and we will discuss that. But the ideas of the mechanism in the set are based on Jean Renoir's 1939 film, The Rules of the Game, La Règle du Jeu, and hunting, the hunt, is a huge part of that film. The film itself is based on Beaumarchais' play, The Marriage of Figaro. And the Count is out hunting most of Act Two.
Yeah.
And there's all this footage. I think hundreds and hundreds of animals died to make this movie because they wanted to show the frivolity of the noble class on the eve of a great war, because it's 1939, just like the Count's Casa Almaviva is on the verge of the French Revolution. But this idea that you expressed of having the cake, and eating it whenever you want it, going out, being able to organize your friends for an afternoon of fun, and killing things.
And this is when you have no need for the food.
Right.
It's for the sport.
It's for the sport.
I remember one time I was doing the Barbara of Seville, the Rossini, Barbara of Seville, in Frankfurt, and the guy playing the Count Almaviva was from Argentina, I think it was. And we started talking about life. We sort of got friendly, and we were having drinks and stuff. We talked about life and family and marriage and stuff. And he actually said, I have affairs all the time, but it means nothing. For me, it's just sport. He said that word. For me, it's just sport.
Sport, he said sport.
Sport. He said, he used the word sport.
Okay.
And I was like, wow, okay, great. What if your wife has an affair? Oh, no.
I know.
No. Yeah, right?
Right.
Exactly what you said before.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I shouldn't assume that you shoot everything with the first bullet, because sometimes you have to wait a long time. I mean, trophy hunting in Spain now is like that, right? Or trophy hunting anywhere. That there will be some resistance from the animal, and that's what makes it a sport. The sport isn't necessarily that you can get it as soon as you want it. It's that the thing puts up a fight.
Yeah, the pursuit is like, for me, like I'm not a hunter, but I feel like the rehearsal process for me, the fun of it is the pursuit of what we're all looking for in that production. I enjoy it so much more than performances, I gotta say. I love the rehearsal process, and when I get to performances, I'm like, oh, all the fun's over now. Now we just have to regurgitate what we said we would do.
We locked it down. Yeah.
But the pursuit of it, and you talk to hunters, the pursuit is everything. The pursuit doing
right.
And
well,
they'll
if
track
Susanna
an animal.
ran towards you, it wouldn't be interesting.
Exactly.
And if Bartolo hadn't stood in the way between you and Rosina, it wouldn't have been interesting.
Now, for those of you who are listening to these little, the names of the characters and the relationships that we're throwing out here, if you don't understand what's going on, don't feel bad, because The Marriage of Figaro is probably, tell me if I'm wrong, it's the most complicated, intricate plot of any story I have ever heard of. And there's so many details, we won't be able to cover all of them in one interview. I remember the first time that I started out singing Figaro, not the Count. Right. And my first exposure to Nozze di Figaro, I was singing with Figaro in a production at the Hamburg State Opera. And I'd never sung the role before. My agent told them that I had, and I had 4 days of rehearsal. And there were basically no cuts in the whole thing. It was crazy. Anyway, I'm on the plane going to Hamburg. I've been studying like a madman because I knew I didn't have time to, learn anything. And I'm on the plane and I'm studying my score and studying my score and studying my score and looking through. And the girl sitting next to me, she goes, "Oh, what's that?" I go, "Oh, this is opera, The Marriage of Figaro." She goes, "Oh, what's it about?" And I started telling her what it was about. And 4 hours later, I was still adding, "Oh, did I tell you that Antonio is Susanna's uncle and he can prohibit her from getting married, and so the Count is hoping that he can enlist Antonio to stop the marriage from happening because then he can have her before she gets married?" Because the whole thing is based on this droit du seigneur, this right of the lord of the manor to have the virginity of one of his servants as a kind of a dowry before the marriage would take place. And so as soon as she gets married, he doesn't have that right anymore. Mm-hmm. Now, it's arguable that at this time in history, in the late 18th century, that droit du seigneur was really not, was alive anymore. Right. I don't know if that's true or not.
People can't find documentary evidence for it.
Yeah, but anyway, that's the premise of the opera, that he has this, that he thinks anyway, that he has the right to sleep with Susanna before she sleeps with Figaro on the night of their wedding. if he can get in there fast enough. He's trying to remove all of these obstacles so that he can do that.
But he abolished it when he married Rosina. I mean,
That's right.
The problem is that, because we were talking about rank,
Right.
having people as basically property,
Right.
and then you getting the trophy,
Right.
getting the trophy wife, and in your exuberance, in your loving enthusiasm for this new chapter in your life, you abolished that old droit du seigneur.
But isn't there a
Lord.
recitative in like the second act between Suzanne and the Countess where she says he wants to follow the droit du seigneur? She says, I thought he abolished that. You go, well, he wants to revive it.
He wants to revive it.
Right?
Right. Well, she tells Figaro that. She says he wants to revive it with me.
Yeah.
Oh,
that's right. It's with Figaro. That's right. Figaro and Suzanne.
And so it's laid out that it technically doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
But because you still have all that power, you can reinstate it or reinvoke it or mess with whoever you need to mess with to have her when you want her, which is the only time you can legally have her.
Yeah.
So why do you think he did give it up in the first place? Because his wife would be enough? Or because he was because you were trying to prove that you were, I keep talking to you like you're the Count, you're not the Count, but in that character, a modern guy? Right? Like, does he sense?
Like, I don't know.
I'm obsessed with the Count because of this stuck place. If the thing is a clock, he's stuck in the gears. He doesn't know whether to go forward or backward because it seems that he's made a good faith effort to go forward.
Yeah, it seems like a good faith effort. I think that's probably what it is.
But then something about the sport of Susanna or the need to have another affair like your friend was telling you at the bar or whatever, that need takes over the desire to participate in a new society.
Yeah.
Or to be one of the pioneers of it, or something.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I really don't know. I'm just going to sort of imagine that he wanted to be perceived as being a good guy, and that he was, gradually letting the people who worked for him have a little more freedom, and sort of loosening the reins a little bit so that he'd be perceived as magnanimous and a really good boss. I guess, but that's just all supposition on my part.
Is there a sense during the show where you suddenly want to seem like a good boss? Like, do you feel the need to do that? I feel like you're always trying to get things into corners and get Susanna into a private place and hide behind the chair. Wait for it if you've never seen the show. There's some of the greatest physical comedy of all time.
Yeah.
Hiding, but you're always trying to make the space, the space of the personal encounter smaller. And Figaro is always trying to make it bigger. He's always like, here are the singers.
Everybody.
Here's everybody.
Come talk to the Count.
Yes.
Look what they say there.
Because they want, ostensibly, to give you the chance to prove what a good guy you are.
Oh,
But they really want to reveal what a jerk you've been.
No, I think they're trying to force his hand. You know? He doesn't.
Right.
Yeah.
He
very artfully gets out of everything.
I mean, I've seen you when the little children come up beside you with their flowers.
Yeah.
And you look absolutely horrified. Like, get away, you little creature, because you're so embarrassed by the whole scene.
Yeah.
So I wonder whether you have a sense of what those scenes feel like. Is it just wrath at Figaro?
Those scenes are so incredibly complicated.
Yeah.
They work on so many different levels. You've got the level of the personal desires, and you've got the level of how people are perceiving you. You've got the level of trying to give the impression of being gracious while being infuriated. You don't want to be embarrassed by this big display that's been put on. All the chorus comes out, the flower grows, and they're saying, please bless us now, and Figaro and Suzanne kneel before your feet. And you want to give the impression of being magnanimous and encouraging of the couple that everybody loves so much while trying to get out of it. So it's very, very complicated, and that's one of the delights of the role. Is it has so many levels to it, so many nuances, so many conflicting emotions that have to be all presented at the same time. So, yeah, that's all happening all the time.
When you're finally alone for the aria,
Yeah.
can you say a little bit about those emotions and maybe how they're different from production to production, depending on how... We are talking about the beginning of Act 3,
beginning of
which
Act 3,
leads
yeah.
to the Count's very, very famous tantrum.
You know, one of the things that's difficult about that particular scene is, and this is the case whenever someone has a thinking recitative, you know, is how to pace it. Because it's so easy to go, che imbarazzo è mai questo? Un foglio anonimo. And take all the time for all of that thought. But most of it falls flat for the audience.
The Count is listing confusing things that have happened in the last little while.
Yeah, and trying to make sense of everything. I don't know. It's that's his only time alone in the whole thing. You sort of, you know, so much of this is just from doing it, and so much of it, you know, I go into it not having no, what I want to do in this scene is I want to make sure that I'm facing this way, or I want to express this line. It's sort of, I don't really think like that. I try to just be in the moment and go from one thought to the next. Of course, you've got to keep a good amount of attention on what the orchestra's doing, what the conductor's doing, what the other character is doing, because, you know, it's all fake. But you have to give the impression that it's not. Yeah.
It never looks fake. When you're singing to... Okay, here's a question. When you're into the aria, Suzanne, you've had your moment of being confused and trying to suss out the situation. Susanna has come in on the pretext of getting the smelling salts. She's told you she will meet you in the garden. You've had a super sexy duet about it.
Yep.
She's left. You think you've finally convinced her. You overhear her say to Figaro, "You've won your case."
Yeah.
You explode in rage.
Yep.
Is the obsession, of course it changes from moment to moment, but can you speak to whether the obsession with Figaro might even exceed the obsession with Susanna? Why should he have her? Why should he have that ben, that thing that I desire? I
think the goal is always to have Susanna. Figaro is obviously getting in the way, and he has no right to get in my way because he's my servant, and he possesses something that I want to possess, and I should be able to take it from him. I think it's always about Susanna and getting his way. It's not really Susanna, it's just the piece of cake. Today it's a lemon curd cake, and tomorrow it's going to be Dutch chocolate, you know? And he wants that cake, and, you know, everybody get away from the cake table. I want that cake. I think that's what it is.
You're really not in love with her.
Oh, no.
Not even for a minute.
Of course not.
Oh!
No.
Sopranos.
No, he has no redeeming qualities, and even in the end, where it's all found out and he's made a fool of and he's caught red-handed, and he apologizes and begs forgiveness from the Countess, and this is true magnanimity. She truly is. She truly is like that. She truly is magnanimous. But up to that point...
She doesn't have to be either. She could go live in a separate villa.
Yeah.
She could go on with Cherubino.
Yeah.
She doesn't have to forgive you, does she?
Not at all. Not at all. But I don't think that, you know, this if we can jump to the end, and this is like just a couple lines from the end where he says, Contessa, perdono, please give me forgiveness. People have been asking him for forgiveness for the whole piece, right?
Show.
Yeah, and finally he's asking for forgiveness.
Pardon.
I think there's no way out. There's no way out. The way I like to play it is not like, oh my God, I have erred, and now I feel such remorse, and What I did was terrible. I don't see it like that. The way I tried to play it is like, there he is, everybody's around him. It's as if they're all pointing guns at him.
Yes.
And he has no choice but to put his hands up. The odds are against him.
The hunter has
It's
absolutely
overwhelming.
become the prey.
He's
and
become
you
the
can't
prey, and he has to humble himself to survive. It's like
He
the
has to humble
dog.
himself to survive.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's like the dog who turns over on its back, in the face of a dominant dog and becomes subservient.
Yeah.
It won't last, but that's how he escapes this particular circumstance.
Right.
Yeah.
I always
It's
wonder
not gonna
about
last.
the very, very end. Because of the way the chords kind of drop
Yeah.
into space,
Uh-huh.
that no one is exactly sure whether we'll live happily ever after.
No, not
This
at all.
way.
Not at all. I would suggest that they won't live happily. I think Suzanne and Figaro have a really good chance,
Yes.
but certainly not the Count and the Countess.
Not the-
And that, for those of you who don't know the piece, is one of the most glorious pieces in music history. Would you agree?
I would.
It's
That and the
just-
second act finale.
And the second act finale
Oh.
is like,
Yeah.
mind-blowing.
Right. There's no sense in that moment. Like, I think everybody wants there to be a sense in that moment that the Count realizes, as you and I were saying before, that mercy is bigger than justice, or that forgiveness is bigger than anger. And maybe that's where the audience is allowed to see that.
Yeah.
But maybe the Count still doesn't.
I think it's temporary. Like I said, I don't think that a person who's that thoroughly imbued with the feeling of privilege, narcissism, and entitlement is going to change. I don't think it's going to happen. And I think that the final denouement, where it's all tutti contenti and questo, what is it? Sono di tormenti, di capricci, di follia, incontente in allegria. Yeah. Now it's all going to be fun. It's all going to be fun. We're going to have a great party and everything. Fireworks and folky.
Yeah.
It's temporary. It's temporary. No, it's like when there's been a big fight in a family and everybody's like, and then suddenly it's like, okay, I'm sorry. Everybody hugs. Now there's still really hurt feelings going on, but everybody's like, whew, thank God that's over. Okay, let's have a party. Okay, we're gonna have a party, everybody. Everybody puts on their best face. They embrace the possibility of being positive and having the relief from the intrigue and the pain and the conflict, and they just want to have a great time. Everybody's smiling now because it's such a relief.
They're too exhausted to do anything else.
Yeah.
They're punchy.
Nobody wants that. Nobody wants that stuff anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Speaking of being punchy,
Yeah.
what are they drinking at this point?
They're probably drinking in Marzimino.
Marzimino, va bene. Non uno champagne.
That's what Don Giovanni drinks.
He would be drinking a Eccellente Marzimino.
By the way, when I did Giovanni, I did it in Italy, in Parma, and I was trying to figure out what Marzimino was, and so I looked around. I looked high and low, and I finally found Marzimino. Have you had it?
Once.
Yeah?
Once.
And it's sort of like an Asti Spumante. It's like not really very good wine. It's kind of fizzy. It's a little bit sweet.
Right.
But anyway, I thought that was fun.
I love that. How do you, since you bring up Don Giovanni, I still want to go back to cocktails, but since you bring him up, I think people always want to know how similar you might think he and the Count are. Or they wonder sometimes whether Cherubino is a Don Giovanni in training, or they wonder whether the Count, allowed to wander down a certain path, could become like a Don Giovanni.
Yeah.
Do you ever think of it in those terms?
No, not really.
Okay.
But I can see the similarities and differences. I see the Count as being highly intellectual and really involved in all the machinations to make things happen for him. He's sort of like, I don't know, I would maybe compare it to James Bond versus a villain. Okay. James Bond being the Count, he can make things happen the way he wants them to, But the Don Giovanni's really like they're like a killer. He's like the killer. Yeah, and he goes through so many women. I mean, it's cruel. What he does is real cruelty. They have the same degree of narcissism, I would say.
And they're both cruel. I mean, the Count can be quite cruel.
Yeah. That Mozart, he really knew how to make bad characters.
Seriously. How do you play? I think this is something else that our audience would be interested in. How do you play a villain? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When you have to be the bad guy,
yeah.
but you can't think of yourself in those terms because you have your own story to live and to tell. How do you do that?
We all have bad guys in us, you know.
Okay.
We just take that. I take that part of me that's selfish and self-serving and angry and merciless. I can be like that sometimes. I think everybody has the capacity to be like that. And you just blow it up. You just expand it. You just constantly, you just live in it, and you just make it bigger and bigger until it's really accessible. So you can just go, boom. There's that emotion. There's that feeling. Yeah.
Do you tend to think about that a lot when you're learning music or preparing the part, or does it come in rehearsal, or does it vary every time?
You know what I did one time when I did Stanley Kowalski in Streetcar Named Desire in San Francisco? I realized that the character was so different from me. And I realized that because he's extremely territorial and he's controlling and he's blunt and he has no finesse in anything he says. He's right in your face. And I'm not like that. And so at the time I had come across, I think it was I can't remember why, but I came across this thing called an Enneagram, which is a personality survey, right? And
we call it astrology for Baptists.
Astrology for Baptists?
Like
okay,
we call the Myers-Briggs astrology.
That's not,
for Episcopalians.
I won't offend anyone. Okay, astrology for Baptists. But it's cool. It gives you kind of a psychological profile, kind of a personality profile. It's a personality survey. So I asked, can't remember who it was now, but someone who was really big on Streetcar Named Desire and who knew the play inside and out, a local woman, I can't remember who it was. But I asked her to take the Enneagram survey as Stanley Kowalski.
Oh, how cool.
And then I did it myself, and then I could compare the results and see where they were different.
And were they quite different?
Oh, so different, so different. And I realized that things like being extremely jealous, possessive, territorial, sort of like the alpha male, that I wasn't very good at that, but I had to really pump those things up. So that's how I went into doing that role, and it really helped me a lot. I haven't done it since, but that was very, very helpful.
Just thinking this is the choice I'll make because I realize that I'm this trait or this type.
Yeah, and then the trick is to not make it look like you don't want to display the process to the audience. You know, you want it to be so ingrained and so internalized that it feels very natural to act like. I guess that's what they call acting. Who knew? I just want to say something about Mozart's music, though, because so many of those cues I got from the music. And this is also how John Elliott Gardner works, is it's really all about everything is contained in the music. Everything you need to know is there, particularly in the case of Mozart. Well, I would say a lot for really, really fine composers, Verdi and a lot of other great composers. But in Mozart, all the emotions are there in the orchestra. You've got all these incredible musical contrasts when he's thinking, ting, 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 ta, ta, ma se pagasse, vom la vecchia pretendente, pam pam, pagarla, pam pam, in qual maniera, pam pam. It's all there. So the thinking music, the joyous music, the doubtful music, the rage music, the retention of that emotion with a forte piano, it's all there. John Elliott insisted that I do that. He insisted that I had to reflect what was in the music. And basically, I learned later this notion that the orchestra is you. The orchestra is me. What the orchestra is expressing is what I am feeling. And a lot of times in Mozart, you have to precipitate what happens. You have to give the emotion, and the orchestra says, yes, that's what he's thinking. So it takes a lot of planning. You have to stay ahead, so that you're always ready to change, to turn on a dime and do that next emotion or thought, then the orchestra then supports with its music. In Mozart, very, very seldom are any dynamics or articulations marked on the vocal line.
Right.
They're all in the orchestra.
Right.
And I think that should be observed precisely, that the singer should do exactly what the markings in the orchestra are. When that happens, it creates this kind of cohesion between the singer and the orchestra that is kind of magical. They become one voice. And it's a thing that I just don't hear. I don't see it and I don't hear it. In the world. And I see like the singers that I really respect or conductors that I really respect who don't insist on it. They just, even Mozart experts who don't. No, Harnoncourt was the same way. Harnoncourt would say exactly the same thing. But I don't see many conductors doing that. And for me, it's so disappointing. I'm going, you're missing so much. You're missing 85% of the brilliance, the genius of this score if you don't follow what's in the orchestra. And I find it to be flat, and it really pisses me off. Right. Well, there you go.
There it is.
Yeah.
It's true.
You want to know what I really think?
Tell me what you I remember Warren Jones coming into class one day and saying, you know, when you've been rehearsing Così fan tutte together all day, everybody is happy at the end of the day. Still happy with one another and happy with the music and happy with everything. Not so after a day of Tosca rehearsals.
Yeah, oh boy.
I mean, it certainly can be after a day of Verismo. But there is something particular in the particular radiance and aliveness of the characters as they relate to one another, and about the specificity with which you have to approach his music.
I don't see how anybody
that makes it a different sport.
Yeah, I don't see how anyone can have a bad day rehearsing or performing The Marriage of Figaro. It's just such a work of genius. I think everyone's trying to rise to the level of the creation, rise to the level of the score. It's just utter
That's
genius.
why it's microcosm, macrocosm. Everybody's telling their own little story, but it's a world. That opera is a whole world. What would you say? I mean, can you say what you love most about it?
About The Marriage of Figaro?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Or the top 10 things.
Oh my gosh. It just makes me smile. There's not a bad note in the whole score. It's so, God, it's just one fantastic little chestnut after another. You have like the opening thing between Figaro and Susanna, and then you got a little recitative, and then it goes into the next great piece, and then another thing, and then the next great piece. They're all like, bam, bam, bam. They all hit the mark. Every single piece hits the mark.
Yes.
Just to clue you in a little bit what we're talking about here, Figaro owes Marcellina a debt because he's borrowed money from her. He's borrowed money from Marcellina.
As he has from Bartolo, but Bartolo doesn't hope to get his back.
Forgot about that part. And it comes to the place where part of the Count's plot is to get Marcellina to press her case, because if she can stop the wedding from happening if Figaro doesn't pay her back. In fact, she can insist that he marries her. And they say, a pagarlo sposarla. Pagarlo sposarla. They have this is like this legal case. Then it turns out that she recognized...
Which the Count, of course, is to decide, because he's the judge.
The Count's going to decide. He goes, oh yes, that's very good.
Sorry.
That's true. You can't, if you don't pay her back, and he knows that Figaro has no money. Then Figaro says something about how he, ever since his birth, he had a noble birth. Everybody laughs. He goes, no, because I have this spatula impression on my arm, which is like a birthmark or something.
It's like a tattoo.
A tattoo or something.
Yeah.
And she goes, a birthmark in the shape of a spatula? And he goes, well, yes. And then he goes, I'm your mother. So Marcellina turns out to be Figaro's mother.
Yeah.
And my mom loves that part, because that tua madre, tua madre, tua madre, tua madre, mia madre, tua madre, tua madre. She loves that, because every time I see her, she goes, tua madre, tua madre, tua madre. It's really cute, yeah.
You, like Figaro, are a man of many talents. And you are a master mixologist.
I'm an amateur mixologist.
An amateur mixologist.
I happen to be one of the best amateur mixologists in Rancho Cucamonga. So that's saying something.
That's saying a lot. That's saying a lot. I know Santa Fe loves themed cocktails for shows.
Okay.
What is the Count drinking?
He's drinking something that's fairly boozy.
Okay.
So it's going to be something with at least 2 ounces of spirits.
Good.
Right? At least 50% spirits is a good cocktails made like that. I think he'd go for something maybe gin-based that's herbaceous, that would include some of the local herbs of Sevilla. There's also this Sevilla orange that, Tanqueray just came out with a Sevilla orange gin that is already flavored with some, I haven't tried it yet. I have a bottle, but I haven't tried it yet.
You'd be steeping your own, though. You wouldn't take it from a bottle.
That's the way I do everything. I make my own infusions and everything. I think maybe, define the word raggiro for me.
Ooh, you should say the line.
Tutto giovan raggiro, il colpo è fatto.
Il colpo è fatto. And this is what the Count says, just between his angry recitative and his angrier aria. You've been talking about getting Antonio in on the action because you know that Antonio will help prevent the wedding because his niece Susanna should not marry Figaro, not knowing who Figaro's parents are. Okay, so you're looking at all your options because everything, tutto, is useful. Giova, a, to, raggiro, and girare is to turn. Raggirare is to turn, like to wind right up. And so raggiro is, it's like a whirl. So it would
whirl.
be, it's more than a whirl. It's like a...
You're not suggesting a blended cocktail, are you?
Never! But it should make the head spin.
Oh, I can do that.
So at least 2 ounces of spirits.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm
Gin-based.
I think it'd be gin-based.
Okay.
We'd probably have some orange in there because they've got beautiful oranges in that part of the world. And something herbaceous like maybe some sage would be nice. Sage is very delicate. Sage, maybe a bit of rosemary. Probably some of these things already be in the gin.
Would they have drunk gin? Do we think that they were drinking gin?
Oh, I have no idea. That's irrelevant. He's not going to drink Marzimino. I'm telling you that right now.
No, abbiamo già fatto il Marzimino.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll work on it. We'll call it il raggiro.
Il raggiro.
And it will make your head spin.
I love it.
Make your head girare.
Ti fa girare la testa, esatto. Ti fa girare la testa. Well, you have made our heads spin with your wisdom and your
long-winded explanations.
And your recipes. We are so grateful that you were willing and able to do this.
My pleasure. I mean, this being one of my favorite operas of all time, maybe my very, very favorite. And I say that having done some great stuff.
So many.
But it's a fantastic piece. So I wish everybody in Santa Fe, I hope they have a great time.
I think they will. I think they are spinning in rehearsals as we speak, and it is going to be wonderful.
Yeah.
And with Harry Bickett conducting.
Oh, great.
So
I love Harry.
It'll be
Oh, he's wonderful.
Yeah, it'll be
Okay.
great.
All
And you
right.
can
Well, thank
probably
you.
expect quite a clack in Munich whenever this
Oh, good.
next Mozart materializes
Yeah, how
for
many
you.
Bartolos get a clack?
Bartolo bartender. I like it.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, thanks
thank
a lot.
you, Rod, and
It was
thank you
fun.
all for
It was fun.
watching. Thank you.
Thanks,
See you at the
everybody.
opera.